Welcome to Build. I'm Laura Haywood. The word polymath is defined as a person of wide-ranging knowledge or learning. No person I've ever heard of better embodies the polymath concept than today's guest, Jonny Sun. He's a doctoral student at MIT and a creative researcher at Harvard, as well as a comedian, playwright, and social media star. He's the author of the hugely popular book, Everyone's an Alien When You Are an Alien Too, and today he's here to promote his work as the illustrator of Gmorning, Gnight, Little Pep Talks for Me and You by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is out today. We have so much to discuss. Please join me in welcoming Jonny Sun.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
This book is such a gift, especially because it was created by request from the people who will be buying it.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was just an amazing outpouring of support, and people really wanted the book, and Lynn and I started talking, and we were like, let's do this thing, let's make it.
I remember when he tweeted, would you guys really buy a book of my Good Morning, Good Night tweets? They're free, and you already have them. And the outpouring, the response was so great. And then when the announcement came that you were on board, we all knew it was for real.
It's funny because that tweet was actually when I started talking to him about it. Because I texted him, and I was like, here are my thoughts on this, and it'd be cool if it were illustrated, and it'd be cool if it were like a very special book for people to hold and kind of keep close. And it's funny that you mentioned that tweet, because that's when I came on board too.
It seems like that wasn't that long ago. It feels like this book was very quick in its, like from the thought, should we do, or the question, should we do this, the decision, yes, we should do this, to actually holding in the book in my hand. It's out today everywhere.
Yeah.
All the pre-orders are arriving. The Twitter is full of pictures of people who have received it. I can't help but think about the fact that Lynn had a big editing job in terms of he's written thousands and thousands of Good Morning, Good Night tweets. Yeah. But you had to do all the hard work for this book. Some of these illustrations are deceptively simple, and some of them are ridiculously complicated.
Thank you.
Can you talk about your process of getting all of that work done in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I kind of dropped everything else and was like, okay, this is my summer project. We have 2 months to get 100 drawings done and to kind of illustrate the entire book. And we were working with this great writer named Cassandra Tidland, who also helped curate and edit the tweets and kind of prepare the manuscript. So shout out Cassandra. And and the process of drawing was just, it was fun. It was really, I wanted to kind of create a portrait of Lynn and kind of encapsulate his personality and kind of his world and all the stuff that he was thinking about when he was writing the tweets into the book. So like even before I started like thinking about the images I would draw, we spoke and we kind of went through all the words in the book and all the text, and I asked him, I was like, what were you thinking when you wrote this? What were you thinking when you wrote that? What was your headspace? What was going on in the world? Where were you? And I tried to get all those details so that when it like came time for me to actually start doing the visuals for it, I could incorporate like the bodega on his corner, and I could incorporate like the toys that his son plays with, and
those are the trains, right?
And all those like little details that for me I could have like taken from like a generic source. I sourced it out of his life, and so I tried to make it as much of like this portrait of him in 100 drawings as I could. And that was like the joy of it. That was the total blast.
What a gift to him and to all of us. I mean, I think we all, everyone who wakes up to a Good Morning tweet from Lynn or goes to bed with a Good Night tweet from him has a sense of his personality, maybe even more so than we know. One of the things he writes about in the intro is that these are often the messages he needs to hear the most himself. I take a similar tack in my own Twitter account where when I really need to hear some advice, I put it out there in the world, and then I read it and I feel like I'm getting it from that person. And I feel like having followed you on Twitter for years and years, you've done something similar, except maybe like the laugh that you needed.
Sure,
like the humor that you wished was out there. Am I on the right track
That's
there?
totally right. I think that's the secret to like anyone who is kind of working in a creative field is you're making the stuff that you want to see yourself, right? And like that goes from like this, like working on books that I want to work on and like kind of telling stories that I want to tell, down to like writing the tweets that I would want to read for myself. So yeah, absolutely, that's definitely something that I that's a mentality that I ascribe to as well.
So let's go back to how you sort of gained your name in Twitter. It was, as you call it, quote, weird Twitter, end quote. Always with the quotes.
A lot of
and
quotes,
I believe
yeah.
I've heard you say 100 sets of quotes on each side, because one thing about weird Twitter is that it never called itself weird Twitter.
Yeah, and they're very mad at that label.
But you talk, okay, so you call them they, but you were a
And
part
we,
of it.
yeah,
So for those who weren't on Twitter in 2012, what was weird Twitter, and what was your role in that world?
I mean, for me, I think it was just like a bunch of writers and like humor people who were using Twitter as this medium for telling jokes and for writing thoughts and for writing weird stories and kind of strange poetry and all sorts of this stuff that, for me, what was interesting as a writer about it was that it was playing within this constraint of 140 characters and really playing with the idea that this was a medium of text. And so it wasn't like comedy in other forms where it's usually performed or spoken. This was something that was meant to be read, right? And so there's a lot of play that happens with that. There's a lot of kind of formal aesthetic stuff that you could do with text. There's a lot of interesting ways you can condense to 140. And then it's just because it was this like strange semi-anonymous community, a lot of the humor was just bizarre and subversive and different than anything that I'd seen elsewhere. And so that was the place I wanted to play. And so I wanted to get in there and kind of make friends and be part of that community.
So you found this community, but you also have one thing that I love about the art that you create is that it has this element of being an outsider. In fact, I want to talk about your first book, Everyone's an Alien When You Are at Alien 2. It's very hard for me to not put the N on the end of you are an alien. But also, as you can see, there's a B in the word alien. And I tweeted you last week and said, how do you pronounce alien? And I subsequently heard you say it's not meant to be said out loud. It's meant to be read.
Yeah.
But if we do have to say it out loud, we say alien.
Yeah, I always say the typos are silent.
Yeah. Except that, say the name of the alien in this book.
Jonny.
So why isn't that typo silent?
I don't know. I guess I just like that one.
I like it too,
Yeah.
Jonny. Can you talk about being an outsider who has, and like where the alien character came from?
Totally.
And then how that may or may not have changed since you have gained so much popularity and so many people identifying with you as the outsider?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like I've always had a worldview and a perspective of kind of the outsider looking in. And definitely in kind of the humor, even before I joined Twitter and before like I was writing through Twitter, a lot of the humor that I was working on and the stories I was writing about were sort of from this outsider's perspective. And I guess I just kept that up. That was something that that feels natural to me, and it feels like I am consistently on the outside looking in. Like, I'm not the person at the party who's going to be in the center of everything. I'm going to like be standing on the corner and kind of like sipping water and being shy and watching everyone else. And I think that just feels like the natural place for me. And I think since the Twitter account has been picking up and since the book came out and everything, I don't think that's really changed. Like, I still feel like the outsider. Now I'm just an outsider to like this new element of my life, and it still feels weird to be doing this, for example. And I'm like, why? Who let me be here? and like doing the book talks and everything. It's just this. It's a new thing for me to kind of feel like an outsider too. Okay,
got it. I wonder about how it must be a challenge to have all these people saying, I want to come stand on the corner with you. I want to come drink water quietly and watch everyone with you.
Oh, that's great. No.
Is it good? Because I feel like I'm also an extroverted introvert. Like, I recharge by being alone.
Right.
But I also, like, you know, when I'm on, I'm on. You have a character in the Alien book who's a hedgehog and the alien himself, Jonny, is exploring the idea of an introvert versus an extrovert. You have a little grammar joke in there that I love that describes the difference. Do you remember it?
Yeah, it's that introverts enjoy people watching and extroverts enjoy people watching.
Yeah.
No, the other way around.
The other way around. An introvert
Introverts enjoy people watching and extroverts enjoy people watching.
Right,
Yeah.
which I think is
I can't
never
believe I
thought of it
botched
quite
my
like
own.
that, which is another, like so many of your thoughts, and I think even so many of the visual metaphors you've created in Good Morning, Good Night are things that are like, oh yeah, of course, like they seem obvious after the fact, but they're also sort of revolutionary in the way that you illustrate them, literally or figuratively.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm really interested in like those small details and in finding like the little pieces of life and of just like the everyday that by like shining a spotlight on that, it becomes kind of important and cool and seen in a new way.
Do you have any formal artistic background? I know you have a degree in, or you studied architecture. Did you learn sort of creative drawing? Because I think of that as sort of technical drawing.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been drawing all my life, and my parents were great, and I was lucky enough to be put in all these like extracurricular drawing classes, and I took a lot of art in high school, and that really sort of coalesced in that architecture degree, and the program that I was in really focused on hand drawing, and so I sort of fell back in love with, and it is a technical type of drawing, but I think it also is. It's creative and technical at the same time.
Architecture.
Yeah, architecture, and I think that type of mentality helped me a lot when I was thinking about this book, for example, because a lot of the drawings are structured in specific ways, and the ways they're laid out on the page are like were fun for me to do, and so I think there was a lot of that technical stuff behind the scenes.
Sure.
To work with kind of the more creative aspect of it.
I think of architectural drawing as like drafting tables and T-squares and stuff. And then you look at something like this bed in this cover photo or cover drawing. And even the straight lines aren't really straight.
Sure.
At the same time, it's very clear the angle that we are looking at this bed from.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a corner of the mattress here that isn't drawn in, but I can see it because of these little lines that on the where the sheets are. And in a way, these drawings have sort of a somewhat almost childlike, quote unquote, simplicity. But there's no way that someone who didn't have an artistic background could draw something like this. And then you look at this microphone, which is very detailed and really specific. I don't know what my question is.
Oh no,
except that I think that that's such a it's such a signature of yours, and it makes your work, whether written, drawn, or some combination of the two, so accessible. Makes people want to lean in.
Thanks. I mean, I'm so glad that you brought up this great graphic that's here, because you're absolutely right. Like this was a drawing angle that I used a lot in architecture school. I think it's called like the oblique elevation or something, but it's from a side view, but the object is rotated, so it's like a cube, but you don't see the top and the bottom sides. And that was like a fun kind of way to play with drawing a bed, right? Because I've often seen beds drawn sort of from like a top-down perspective, like a box, or from a completely sideways perspective.
Yeah,
and
where it's like an H with a
exactly,
pillow. And
and so like I thought this would be like a fun way to do it. And I think even in architecture school, a lot of my technical drawings were sort of free-handed like this. And so I'm always interested in that, like that tension between a very formalized style and a very kind of naive style, I guess.
You know, it reminds me of some of the writers that I loved the most as a child that I think you did too. Shel Silverstein, and oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The guy who drew Max, who Where the Wild Things Are.
Maurice Sendak.
Yeah, Maurice Sendak. But someone actually sent me a tweet when I announced that I was going to be interviewing you and said, can you ask him about being the modern day Shel Silverstein?
Oh my gosh, that's a huge honor. I don't think I live up to that yet, but he's definitely his work has definitely been a huge inspiration to me, and it was definitely like Where the Sidewalk Ends was sitting on my shelf as one of the like inspirations for Good Morning, Good Night, especially in how the words play with the text and how it's all laid out and kind of the general feel of it. So yeah, absolutely. Like Shel is hugely influential. Maurice Sendak is hugely influential, and Bill Watterson as well.
Oh yeah, Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, I'm such a huge fan of his work. Yeah.
I think what all of those have in common with you is that this is work that can be sometimes seen, if you don't dig too deep into it, as simple or I don't want to say juvenile, but like for kids, right? Like cartoons, poems, this like plays on words and funny switches of lexicon.
Sure, yeah.
And yet there's something about them that touches the soul of and feels ancient in the way that people relate to it.
Totally.
You're hitting the nail on the head.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you and Lynn found each other.
Yeah, me too.
Can you talk about the way you got to know each other?
I'd been following him forever, and I'd fallen in love with his work ever since In the Heights. When, like, the first time I heard that album or the recording of it, I was just blown away because I didn't know that musicals could sound like this, and I didn't know that stories like the ones told in the Heights were kind of being told. And so I'd followed him on Twitter since then, and I think I was one of those people kind of commenting on his tweets every so often and being like, I think you're great. And then eventually, I think once I started occupying like this interesting space within Twitter, and I think once I started understanding like my voice and understanding what I wanted to do on Twitter, we sort of found each other, or he finally found me, and we kind of had been talking since then, and we kept in touch, and like this cool friendship kind of grew from that.
And it was online at the beginning. How long did it take you to meet in person, and what was that first time meeting like?
The first time we met was after Hamilton, one of the like really early on.
At the Public?
Not at the Public, actually, but right when it went on Broadway, but before it sort of like kind of blew up into what it is now.
I feel like the moment was when the cast album was released.
Yeah.
Like I saw Hamilton at the Public. I saw it several times in previews, and then everything changed when that album became available worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, it was around that sweet spot that we met, and like I actually went, and I didn't know I was supposed to like go backstage to meet him, and so I waited in the line outside, and I was like, Lynn, it's me, it's Jonny, and then that's when we first hung out.
Oh my gosh! Wow. So you were just holding your playbill,
yeah,
with the other fans, and then that must have been pretty crazy. Did he did he stay with you after everybody else left?
Yeah, we hung out for a bit after. He was like, meet me at the end of the line. We'll go hang out.
Yeah.
And it's just been great. He's such a generous person and such a great friend and such an inspiration. So.
There's one thing I know about him is that he truly values people who are forging their own paths, people who are doing things that they've never done before. He has such love for his fan base, and I think he especially responds to them when they're creating new takes on what maybe they see other people do. In fact, your collaborator, Cassandra, who's the one who went through all of these tweets, she's somebody that he met online as well.
Right, yeah, she's from like the Hamilton community.
Yeah, she's a fan of the show who even has a Twitter handle that is like a Hamilton reference, and she was retweeting the best of the Gmorning Gnights. So Lynn said, if we need someone who knows this body of work inside and out, this is the person that we should tap to do that. And I think,
and she did such amazing work. Like she kind of filtered through like so many of the tweets, sorted them, made sure the kind of emotional arc of them throughout the book made sense. She kind of went back years and years to find ones that like barely had any likes or retweets on them, and so like she really dug deep and did such an amazing job in curating that.
The photos that she's posted of like all the different ways she sorted them, the categories she used, it's like it's clear that this was something that she took really seriously. And again, it plays into this idea that what seems to land, I think, with an increasingly social media conscious world is the things that people just do for fun.
Yeah.
The things that they do because they love it.
Right.
Whether it's you creating jokes that have typos in them, whether it's Lynn creating the theater that he wishes that had existed when he was a kid, or the tweets that he wishes that he could read, whether it's Cassandra having true joy and not expecting any credit for curating the best of Gmorning Gnight for her own Twitter account, or for me, you know, like just posting, like sort of barfing out love for theater on my own Twitter account nonstop. What people resonate with is the authentic joy.
Yeah, having no chill whatsoever. I think that's the best way. Yeah,
and being proud of it. You are doing something that I put under the headline or the heading #KindnessWarrior with this book. You did it with the Alien book, and it is helping people who can't afford to buy the book get one through the kindness of others. Will you talk about that?
Yeah, this was something that was actually inspired by another online writer's work. Her handle is The Bloggess, and she does something called Booksgiving, because she's a writer as well, and she encouraged people to buy books for each other. And she had been doing that through her blog, and someone had actually mentioned me at some point when this first book was coming out and said it'd be really cool if like we could, like, someone was just like, I want to be able to gift this book for other people and buy it for them, and it'd be cool if there was a way that like we could do that as a group, as a community. And I was like, okay, this is great. And so I tweeted. And basically the format is like I'll tweet it, and people will reply with saying that like they would love a copy of the book, and then really nice people will come in and find those people and send them a gift, a copy of the book. And it's such a great kind of thread to scroll through. Like whenever I feel kind of bad or cynical about the world, I'll like go through that and I'll see just like nice people being nice to each other.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet and wonderful.
The world, excuse me, the world is a beautiful place if you open up the doors just a little bit and invite people in to perform acts of kindness.
Yeah.
I love when good people find good people and create work for other good people.
Yeah.
And Gmorning, Gnight is such a perfect example of that.
Oh, thanks.
We have time for a couple of questions from the audience.
Sure, let's do it.
What's going on, Jonny?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, and yourself. Congrats on the book.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask, so you're a technical expert as well as an artistic person, and it seems like you have a healthy balance between your right and your left brain. Is it anything you do that keeps that healthy balance, awry, I guess?
Yeah, I think the thing I try to do the most is make sure that they're not separate things. And I think like the things that I get most excited about creatively are things that kind of merge like a technical kind of side with a creative side. And I love it when those two can speak to each other. And so like I think that comes out in like the stories and the plays I write are structurally very interesting, because I think there's something cool about figuring out the structure to it and then finding the like creative story that matches that structure. And I think for as much, and even in this drawing that we were talking about with this bed, I think finding a way to bring those two together and allowing each of those to strengthen the other side of them is, that's the way I operate. And I think that's kind of my favorite way to do it. And I think just recognizing that they're not kind of two opposing things that kind of fight with each other, trying to find ways to bring them together and trying to find ways to express both of them so that they feed each other, I think is the thing that I always do.
Speaking of your plays, how soon till we get to see one of those on a New York stage?
Oh, I'm not too sure actually. I think I've been so busy with other stuff that I also like I feel like there's so much pressure around doing a play. So I guess when it happens, it happens.
Are you submitting? Like, should we, like, do I need to call some of my producer friends?
I will not say anything yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question that's sort of in the same vein is your Alien ever going to become an animated series?
I would love that. So I think if we can figure that out, that would be so cool.
Maybe you could get some original music written by a friend of yours, and that could help get some people interested. Just an idea, not think of anyone in particular. That's a lie. Who else has a question?
Hi, I just wanted to ask about something you said earlier about how creatives are trying to make the things that they themselves want to see. I was wondering how you get yourselves to keep going with the project when you don't really know what it's going to look like. You just have like a feeling about it, a vague idea, but it doesn't really exist yet.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it's something that I struggle with a lot. Just I feel like I'm super critical of myself too, and so every time I have an idea, I'm like, this is dumb and this is bad, and I try to, for the most part, not listen to that side of my voice. But I think a lot of kind of my process is I have this notes app on my phone that I just like anytime I think of something that might be cool to pursue, I just write a one-liner down. And I have, I think, at any point, like 100 different things on that app, and I think the way that I kind of navigate all that stuff is I just keep kind of pushing each of those things forward bit by bit until one of them becomes the thing that like I can't let go of, and that becomes just like this earworm that's stuck in my head, and that idea becomes the thing that I'm like, I I can't like exist without that existing in the world. And that's kind of once you find that, it kind of grabs you, and you're kind of like, I have to see this through. I have to make this. And I think the other element of that is, as soon as there's something that is this seed, bringing other people into it and getting other people invested and kind of sharing that with people, and finding collaborators, and finding editors, and finding kind of people who are better and smarter at you at the things that need to be the thing in order to make it exist, right? And I think being as much as you can, forming a team and forming a community around any project, I think is the thing that makes it better than what any one person could make. And I think it kind of elevates it into like a thing that a community grows. And I think that's always so fun and always so special. So
you just like brought a tear to my eye. I've never heard collaboration defined in such a like resonant way. We have time for one more question.
Theater, though, right?
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. Like whether you're actually making theater or whether you're just the kind of person who's inspired by it, it's all about collaborating and creating something greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I was like a drama nerd in high school, and I think that I've written about this, but I think like that mentality of just like falling in love with something and making it as a group is the thing that kind of makes me excited about doing anything. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like swooning over here. We have time for one more question.
Hi. So your first work was a lot of you, like you had a lot of control over it and you got to think of the ideas and write it and illustrate. And then in your second work, you're doing a lot of collaborative work. So I was just wondering, what was one of the more difficult things about doing a collaborative work, and what was your favorite part of doing a collaborative?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think I can't really think of, like, the difficult thing about this book particularly was the timeline of it. And aside from that, it kind of was surprising how smooth it went and how much fun it was. And this really was kind of like an act of joy. And I feel like a lot of the times when I was working on the book, I was like, oh, I would like do this as just like as a fan, you know? And so I think that was amazing. And so that was the greatest part about collaborating on Gmorning and Gnight was just talking with like Cassandra and talking with Lynn all the time and just being like, does this fit? Does this drawing work? Is there something that would work better? What do you think of this? And just getting like that feedback so that more people than like myself kind of are part of that conversation. And I think that makes it better. And I think it like made a lot of the choices in the book make sense. And also with the first book, like I got to work with such an amazing editor on that. And we actually like spoke every week. As soon as I found out that I was going to work on this book, I spoke with my editor every week, and he was like, "This is not the normal way that someone writes a book." But I really wanted to talk with him like all the time and kind of check in and be like, "What do you think of this? How do you think this is working?" And really work with him. So that sort of felt like a collaboration too. And I think I just really liked that kind of spirit. So yeah.
Nothing is really ever created in a bubble except perhaps a tweet.
Sure, yeah. And sometimes I wish I had feedback on those.
A collaborative team on those pieces. Well, the commenters will let you know. They'll give you that feedback. We have a lot of people who watch this program on demand. So for those watching it first thing in the morning, I want to say good morning.
Good morning.
To those watching last thing before they go to bed, I want to say good night. And to those of you who are watching us live right now or some other time throughout the day, thank you so much. Good afternoon, good day. Jonny-san, it's been a delight to have you here.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much.
this is the first time of many. Congratulations on Good Morning, Good Night.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. Yay.